So yeah, I've been hired to produce a film documentary on Stan Getz. I talked to your mentor, among many people, Jack DeJohnette, about Stan. But I wanted you to talk specifically about a specific time when Stan showed love to you.
Hmm. Wow. Um, well, I played with Stan in his later years, and he was very much sober during those years, and I think he was really a peach of a guy, and he had a reputation of not being that. I think maybe due to a little, too much drinking at times,
Yep.
but um,
Among other things. Yeah.
yeah. But I only played with him once during that era, and it was just one gig, so I don't really even remember much about it. But the thing about Stan that I really love, and it's so true about most great artists that don't want to become stagnant. He was himself always, but he always surrounded himself with younger musicians, modern players. He had the best bands in the world. I mean, I still look at that clip online with Gary Burton and Roy Haynes playing with Stan. It's just so hip, and he just never succumbed to, his hit songs or, just kind of status quo. And I learned a lot from him, on that, because it's the same thing that with people like Wayne Shorter and Herbie Hancock. They're not trying to rest on their laurels, so to say. And as far as just showing love, I mean, I probably don't have any real juicy stories like that, other than I felt like he was a friend, and he was always very supportive of me. I guess I can think of one thing that he did that showed a lot of love was he came and played on a session for me for a record that never got released, and I was doing kind of R&B meets jazz and meets folk music. Just all kinds of hodgepodge.
I dig, yeah.
Which is why it never got released. But he came and played, and I had written this arrangement on I Love Lucy theme, and I had a rapper on it, and it's kind of like, Bob Marley groove, but with a remix kind of dance beat sound, and he was just great. The recording was great. His solo was great, and I'm sorry it wasn't released, just to hear Stan in that kind of more like a hip hop context.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like that thing is waiting to be birthed at any point. I mean, it would hold up better today maybe than when it was cut.
Yeah, I would just have to go back and change some things because it was in the '80s and late '80s. It sounds a little dated.
Yeah,
late 80s, early '90s.
So I mean, can you talk about? Love is a relative word. I mean, how did he show support to you?
Well, I mean, first of all, he paid me decently, and that's a very big deal because that wasn't happening, so much. He was very generous. He was very generous with musicians in general. He didn't try to take advantage of people. And for me, as a female, still relatively young at that time, I know that certain people are of mentality that, well, they need to make sure they hire, cats because they have families or, they have more bills to pay or, I've heard that story before.
Right.
But Stan was not like that. And he trusted me musically. I helped him, with band members and, putting people together. And, I used to go to his house and, hang out when he was living in Malibu.
You used to go, I guess this is important. I mean, how did he develop trust with you? He obviously had big ears, but I mean, it was pretty quick. I mean, you started to assume responsibilities quickly when you joined him?
Well, that's just kind of my personality. Like almost every band leader I've played with, develops that kind of trust with me where I may recommend other players. I may help with a set list. It's the producer in me coming out.
Mm-hmm.
So I think is this, and often me being one of the youngest people all the time back in those days. Now I'm not. Now I'm one of the oldest. But being one of the youngest people back in those days, I think there's a desire from the masters to, stay current and stay useful and understand what's going on at the time. So I think I was kind of thrown in that spot because of my age.
Did you, setting aside the substance abuse, and he was sober, but why did, what was Stan? He was a very sensitive cat, and he also, was he a perfectionist as well? I'm just trying to, what's clearly developing after I've already interviewed probably 24 cats, and it's only going to get deeper. But the guy definitely had a Jekyll and Hyde quality to him, alcohol or not. And I'm just trying to get it at the core of this man, that because, like you're just another example of somebody as a musician who admired him, felt he respected you and always treated you well, but yet the stories of him. Mm-hmm. And that's what they all say. Johnny Mandel says it, and Stanley. Well, they all have great stories, but none of them were ever directly affected by it. But what did you see these different sides of Stan at times? And if so, how did you deal with it?
I gotta say, I really didn't see it. He was, I thought, extremely gracious dealing with, his illness, and I really didn't see very much negativity. I mean, one guy that was on the road with us kind of got into it. He wasn't used to going on the road. He was more of a studio guy or whatever. He got into a little bit of complaining sometimes, and then, I saw Stan get a little pissed off at him, but, it was kind of rightfully so, And I didn't see anything that made him seem like an asshole,
Absolutely.
Like all the stories, that I heard, which made me feel like it was definitely the drinking and stuff. And he also had new love in his life, when we were touring, and somebody that was taking care of him, and he had a lot of hope, for, beating his predicament, health predicament.
No, I dig. Can you talk about, did you have trepidation? How did you even connect with Stan to begin with?
I'm not sure. Somebody recommended me, I think, back, before, when I still lived in New York, maybe. So I did one gig with him, and then maybe, 6-7 years passed, and then he called me again, and then I started touring. So I'm not sure who recommended me the first time. The one funny story that I will tell you was, it's funny, not funny actually, but
just say it.
Yeah, one of the more poignant stories for me is just the very last tour he hired me for. It was going to be, I can't remember the year exactly. What year did he pass?
1991.
91, okay. So I did a summer tour in 1990, which ended up being his last, big summer tour. And he said, let's do it again, 1991, same band, I got dates lined up, we're good to go. And I said, okay. And then Diane Reeves, who's friends with somebody that was very close to Stan, she said, he was really sick. I'm not sure if his health will allow him to do this tour. So I called him because I didn't want to, be stuck without any work for the summer. And I said, "So you sure everything's cool? We're going to do this tour?" And he said, "Yeah, I'll even give you more money." So then he gave me really nice little raise, and it was probably more money than I had made, to date, per show, on a per show basis. And then Natalie Cole's people called me to do her big Unforgettable tour for that same summer.
Wow.
And so I was really like, oh my God, I really want to do that. So I called Stan one more time. I was like, are we good? Because, we had some other calls. I just want to make sure everything's cool. Oh, no, we're all set. We're all straight. And then, of course, he passed. And I just felt like, it was important for me to be loyal to him. I had the feeling that might be what was going to happen. But it was important for me to be loyal to him and not just think about myself, my own career and finances. So then I was stuck without any work for the summer. And I had one show, I think it was in May, with Herbie Hancock, Stanley Clark, and Wayne Shorter in St. Lucia. And we were all like equal. It was equal billing. So for me, it was, great gig. And for Wayne and Herbie, it was just like a vacation. But while we're out on this gig, I started saying, wow, I don't have any work this summer. And Herbie said, well, could you recommend a drummer for me? I'm doing this hip-hop tour. I did an album called This Is the Drum, and I need a drummer. But he said, I can't ask you to do it because I don't have any, real money to pay you. So, I was at this dilemma of wow, do I just kind of take less money and work with Herbie Hancock after coming off of this thing where we had this equal billing? And he said, well, the way it is I have 20 people on the road, and I'm still being paid as if it was a trio, like the Herbie Hancock trio. And I have 20 people traveling. So I understood his situation, and I decided to do it. And I said, this is a favor, and, you can never ask me to do something like this again. And I did it, and then it created this long-term relationship, with Herbie. So I felt like my loyalty to Stan is what helped create a long-term relationship with Herbie.
Wow, that's such a cool story. So, but I mean, and you didn't you just made mention of the fact that you were out of work for the summer. That wasn't a major.
Well,
what I'm saying is Stan's spirit kind of fused that. You took less money, but at the same time, to this day, you still play with Herbie.
Sometimes, yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was because when one door closes, another one opens.
Amen, baby.
and it's also about karma, and I felt it was important to Stan to feel like he was going to make that summer tour. So I couldn't not have that same faith that he had. And take I really wanted to play with Natalie Cole. But, I had to just do what was right in my spirit.
I dig. No, this is that. I'm just trying to get some chronology. I'm looking at a YouTube clip, the last recording, 1990, you on drums, Alex Blake, a couple of synth cats, Eddie Del Barrio, who I interviewed, and Kenny Barron and Stan. So this was this would have been Summer Tour 91 when he passed. He passed before that summer, right?
Right.
This is the other part of it is that I am fascinated, and I haven't yet gotten to Wayne and Herbie. I'm really ready to get down with them, but I when I talk to Stanley Clark or Hugh Masekela or Jack DeJohnette or it could be anybody, I always am fascinated with nonverbal communication on the bandstand, and I want you to talk about your the qualities of leadership that you believe are most important on the bandstand when you're a leader of a group.
Oh, well, I've learned from the best.
Right, and if there's a way to talk about, Stan was lyrical. He was improvising all the time. He was getting stuff out of his system. He was a master. So specifically, what was unique about Stan from everybody else as far as his leadership qualities?
Well, everybody's style is different. I think there's different types. So there's other people that are a type that's similar to Stan, and then there's other people that are type that are more similar to, say, Wayne Shorter. So with Stan, that type is he commands respect. His presence, the way he speaks to you, he commands respect. He also gives and shows respect, or gave and showed respect. But you don't really challenge him. You know that he wants to do what he wants to do, and you're going to be there to support him, and that's how it should be. I mean, especially as a rhythm section player, our job is to support the leader. At first, my alliance is to the music. I have to do what I feel is right for the music, and then I serve the music and I serve the leader. And it was kind of easy to feel that way, to be in service to Stan, because he was pretty clear. Though if he trusted you, he was open at the same time. And, it's really funny because another funny story about that, I recommended another guy who will remain nameless for the tour before Alex, because we were in L.A. rehearsing, and there was a guy in L.A., and he played electric bass mostly, but he played acoustic too. And this new music that we were doing had a lot of electric bass. So this guy, I knew I'd seen him play acoustic maybe once, but maybe it wasn't necessarily walking, quarter notes.
Right.
So we get there, and he plays the electric stuff fine, and then when we go to swing a tune, it's just, he was just kind of dragging. It just wasn't happening. So I knew he wasn't going to last. And I can't even repeat what Stan said, but he grabbed me and pulled me aside and was like, "Why'd you recommend this guy?" He's I can't say what he said.
Just you could. This absolutely.
Yeah.
You can say it on radio. We're extraterrestrial, so no worries there.
Okay. So he was like, this guy is making my balls drop to my knees.
Well, no, he says that. I tell you, some of the.
So I was like, wow, okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I recommended him. I really thought, he could do it. So he was kind of dragging the time a little. So I went back to the guy and I said, why don't you just play a little more on top of the beat? I think that he would like that, just try to not play so behind. And so Stan, fired him, and we got Alex Blake, who he does. And so I ran into this guy, I don't know, maybe 10 years later almost, and he said, I've always wanted to ask you this, why did you tell me to play on top of the beat? Because then I did that and got fired. And I just wondered, what, he was acting like I sabotaged his gig, and it was hilarious because he had no clue that, Stan was not digging him because of his time feel, and I was trying to help him push it along, and he felt like what I said is what made him get fired.